Alright, if you want to convert your 2nd New Zealand Division troopers out of plastic, because that's going to be the easiest way to get the most accurate finish on them, there are 2 boxes that you are going to need. Now, there are a few sprues out there which are going to be nice to have, and I thoroughly recommend, if you've got buddies who are into bolt action or you're collecting multiple armies, keep a bits box, because you are going to make use of quite a few little random oddities to really make these guys as accurate as possible. But the core of it is going to be these 2 boxes here. We're going to use the bodies from the Commandos box, the arms, heads, and a few other little bits of equipment from the 8th Army box. Now, why the Commandos instead of the ordinary plastic British infantry? Short answer, we can sneak a few berets into our army as well. Now, at some point I'm going to tell you all about the Divisional Cavalry. The short story is that in late 1944, the Divisional Cavalry, which we would today think of as being similar to armoured recon, were converted into an infantry battalion because they were no longer needed doing the job that they'd been trained for. We needed manpower in Italy. But they kept their black berets because they insisted they were still tankers. So if you want to include a section with a couple of guys lurking out with black berets, that's that's cool. You know, if you're looking for ways to put just New Zealand troops on the table, these are going to be the little bits and pieces where you can really make that unit sing. But to make things a little bit clearer, let's crack these open. Now, from the Commando sprue, there's really only one thing that we're going to need, and that is going to be the bodies. You can also make use of the Piat and the 2-inch mortar if you want to use those with sleeved arms. And as mentioned earlier, you're probably going to want to save a couple of the heads. So, to assemble our dude, let's go ahead and clip off one of these bodies. Alright, we'll pop that body on a base for now and put it aside because we need to talk about the other box, the British 8th Army. Now, if you'd really like to up the variety of poses and the look of your unit, you can still use some of the 8th Army bodies for units that are in late Italy, because during the summer months I have seen photographs of dudes wearing a mixture of battle dress tops and khaki drill shorts, khaki drill trousers, and battle dress tops with the sleeves pushed up. It's a mess. Uniform really wasn't. So if you want to use some of these spare bodies, well then go nuts. But the real star on these sprues is the short magazine Lee Enfield. These are the No. 1 Mark III variant. Now, New Zealand was never issued with the No. 4 Mark Is, which you'll find in the later plastic infantry boxes. We never got them. We started acquiring them in late 1945, so after the war was over, and a lot of the provisioning was taking place through Italy. A lot of Lend-Lease gear was finding its way back to what would essentially end up Allied nations after the war, and it was then that New Zealand started looking to the long view of what the battle rifle was going to be for the New Zealand Army. During World War II, we opted not to upgrade to the No. 4. So these No. 1 Mark IIIs are the correct rifle for New Zealand Division. So as well as having the rolled sleeves and looking cool as hell, this is an important reason why this 8th Army frame is going to be necessary. As well, you've got all of the tin lids and packs that you're going to need, so I'm going to clip off a pack and a helmet, but I want to show you, now that we know what we absolutely need to make this accurate, I'll show you a couple of things that are nice to have. Now, if you're planning on building armies for both sides of the conflict during the Italian campaign, chances are good you're going to have either a box of Fallschirmjäger or, like this here, the German Grenadiers. Now these fellas, you've got tons of rolled sleeve arms, which are going to fit quite well with the bodies from our British infantry box. Reason being, it suddenly doesn't matter whether or not they've got the right cuff buttons, you know. And the cool thing as well, I mentioned the MG42 earlier. You don't necessarily want to fill your whole platoon full of these, but New Zealand, we were famed for nicking the MG42, especially the MG34 earlier in the war, but including one of these in your platoon is going to be a cool way to really mark it out. It's worth also having a chat with your opponent, like for example, the Vickers K gun that the SAS and the Commandos can have. For 5 points extra in bolt action, it gets an extra shot. Now that could quite closely mimic the MG42, so have a chat with your opponent and just say, hey, if I take that rule, if I pay the extra, can I have that MG42 do what it does? You can also use some of the MP40s if you do want, again, captured German kit. It was pretty prevalent. I've even seen a photo of one dude with a Kar 98K over his shoulder. So I am going to clip off, for this fella that I'm assembling, these arms up the top here, and I'm going to assemble him with an MG42. Now there are a couple more pieces which are nice to have, but not wholly necessary. These I'm including as recommendations if you can find the parts. Now this is the plastic infantry sprue for the Italians, so the Italian infantry and black shirts box set. You'll see here there are two different types of gas mask containers. The canister bag thing, box, bag, whatever you want to call it, and these older marks of bags. Now on my Italian infantry, I'm assembling these guys with the slightly more modern gas mask canister bag, I guess, but these old ones, the bags quite closely resemble the ones that would have been worn by Kiwi troops. Now, same as pretty much everything else I've been saying about New Zealand didn't upgrade its equipment. When the little green respirator case bags were added to British equipment, so those little square boxes, New Zealand instead stuck with what we had. And they looked very much like these little bags on the Italian infantry sprue. So if you're not going to end up using them, or you've got a friend who is playing Italians, they're the opposing force for your Italian campaign stuff, ask them for these bags. These will make a really good change. And they actually fit fairly well right where that respirator case is supposed to go. The plastic bodies for the British infantry have a strap across the torso, which is supposed to be dangling on something here at the hip. You can just leave it off. You could put in an extra web pouch or something. A bag, I think, is going to add a little bit to a few miniatures. Now, while I've got them here, you'll find that arms from more modern infantry kits are going to fit fairly well on the plastic bodies. The 8th Army and the British bodies work perfectly well together. You are not going to have to fuss with them, except in some outlier cases where you've got rifles too close against the body. Where it comes to the example of our fellow with the MG42 from earlier, I have, if we tuck up under there, had to scrape away some of the web pouch there. It's going to be invisible once he's painted, but it's just to make that MG42 tuck in against his body a little bit more easily. So that is the conversion side of things pretty much handled. Let's go ahead, quickly throw a little bit of paint on one of these fellas and see what they look like. After a splash of paint, you'll have something that looks like this. Now, I have done painting guides on, very similar before, so I'm not going to repeat that in here, just to know that I have, I'm fairly pleased with that. I think the shirt color might be a little dark compared to what I had in mind, but the overall effect is going to look good. I think that's going to quite suit an army. So, now I get to get building. I'll put this fella to the side to remind me what I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah, I will hopefully be back with another little update fairly shortly. Hopefully you find this guide useful if you are looking to paint, collect your own Kiwi stuff. But yeah, let's get into it.